Let's go through the Maimah together and follow along as we basically go over it. First, okay. Downstairs. So the pasuk says, "Vayivez of Lishloach b'Mordechai levadai." So originally he wanted to that pasuk saying here to stretch his hand out against Mordechai, but then when informed that he's a Yid, so it's all Jews. So the Medrash says, and the Rebbe is medayik in most of the pratim of the Medrash. Bozai ben Bozai, so you are despicable one, the son of a despicable one. This is using this very language that you have a Yivez. You find Mordechai despicable, you are despicable, the son of a despicable one. Because by Esav it says, Vayivez Esav es abchela, and Esav despised the bchela. And here, Haman despised, Vayvakish, Haman lahashmin eskol haYehudim. The Medrash concludes that the marshal for the wicked Haman, to what can it be compared to? To a bird that made a nest on the edge of the sea, on the seashore. And the sea washed it away. He said, I will not move from here. This is the phraseology of the Medrash. It is common to many Midrashim. Eini zaz misham. I will not move from here when someone is committed to something until I make the sea dry land and the dry land sea. What did he do? He took from the water of the sea with his beak and poured it on the dry land, and took from the dry land and cast it into the sea. This prat is not explained in this Maimer. The sea and the dry land. Obviously, it's Amadis Gali, Amadis Gassi. The Medrash continues. So, his friend, his colleague, comes and stands by him and says to him, You have bad luck, you unfortunate one, hapless one. In the end, what are you accomplishing? So today, Rosha, you great fool of the world. I wanted to destroy them, and I couldn't. As the pasuk says that Hashem wanted to destroy the Eden, said pasuk until him but only because Moishe Rabbeinu was chosen, one stood at that breach before him and removed his anger. And you want to destroy them and annihilate them by your life, your head will be lifted up from you in exchange for theirs. You will be saved, and they will be saved, and you will be hung. So all the shaylis were, what's the connection between Esav despising the Bechira and Haman despising Yidden? Both use the word bozoi, but obviously must go beyond that, just a common language, but the teichen must be the same. The Bechira and the connection to Haman and Mordechai. Also, the marshal of the Oif, it's a marshal in Torah, so it's meduik in all of its paratim. What does it mean that his chaver comes? Who's the chaver and the imshal, the Eibishter? How can we say in the marshal that the Eibishter is a chaver of Haman? And the third shaila is, Haman's downfall is described as his head being lifted in exchange for theirs. What's the diak of the head, and as opposed to him simply being destroyed rather than the Yidden? Yeah. I should continue this way, or yes? I think it's a good idea to remember it better. I'm going to help you, so you're going to help me, I'm sorry. But now by the Yuvan, I'm going to pause here and there and ask you to continue the Chazzarah, or some key words, keep you on your toes a bit. So this will be understood from Maimon that's a ''tschek. And he also brings in the Al-Sheikh that, asked the question we just asked now about Chaveirei. So what does the Tzemach Tzedek say? It's based now. First, by dressing, why Neshama came down Lamata. See, he did the Tzedek Aliyah. What's the Aliyah? So the Neshamas, the Shadish is where the Neshamas, before it comes down, they are the level of Tzadikim. And what's that level? Shema de Tikkun. Can someone briefly define that? Shema de Tikkun. What does that mean? Let's start with Tikkun. What's Olam HaTikkun? That's what? Anybody, one word?
Atzilus.
Olam HaTzilus and Shema is what? What is the dominant? What's the middle of Shema? Is Aleph. Aleph Bechlal goes on Zoh. So Zoh, Datzilus, that's where the Neshama emerges from. The Shadish is Chochma, Datzilus, but emerges, that's the 7 branches of the Benoida, 7 Neshama types, 7 personality types. That's the Shadish of Neshama L'mayla, Zoh, Datzilus. And coming down Lamata, the Neshama achieves an Aliyah. How could it be going down an Aliyah? Because, why? Because when we come down Lamata, that's what the whole Avodah is, the beard of the world. So the world, the Yonim of the world, so the Shadish of those in Yonim are Tikkun, are higher than Tikkun, and that is the union of what? Toyo. That's in the square brackets. Akdameitan say that the Yitzhahara gets the first. The Yitzhahara only appears later in a person's life. At Bar Mitzvah, and the Rebbe says that the Neshama only integrates in the body at Bar Mitzvah and Bas Mitzvah. So who's there first? And who's entrenched first? As the Shabbamas Yitzhahara. So not just Bezman, but also B'mayla, because it comes from a higher Shadish. As we mentioned, Alter Ben Tanya also begins talking about Nefesh Elikis only in Perek Beis. First he speaks about Nefesh Bahamis, then in Perek Aleph. Now, since Toyo is higher, so that causes the bitter of the Yonim Mata that causes an Aliyah higher than Tikkun. He brought the Arizal, Kilel Lechem Levada Yichi Odom Kalkol Moitze Pi Avaya Yichi Odom, that a person, the Shaila is, he's also comes from Pi Odom, from Pi Havaya. So what does he need? Food, which are lower forms of life. That is because the interesting point here that the Moitzi Pi Havaya Shebodom is Melam HaTikkun. His chayes, what keeps his nefesh tethered to the body, that's a Melam HaTikkun. But the Moitzi Pi Havaya of the Lechem, and likewise Demim and Tzimeach, is from Toyo higher. That's why he needs it. He needs them, and they don't need him. But it fell very low, so you have to elevate it. And that's the Aliyah B'chalal that happens to the Neshama becoming Lamata, accessing Lamatoya, which is higher than her own Shadish. Now, is Gimel. This is a fascinating part. But in elevating the world and Adamer, our fellow human beings, there is Gimel Sugim. I'm sorry. The lower 3 sugim of Doim, Tzemeach, and Chai is a relatively simple, uniform matter. But it comes to Medaber, it's not so. Because there's different paratim in the way of the bir, and we don't find these challenges of these paratim, they don't exist in the lower forms of life. Simply because they have no bchira, and therefore the bir happens when you engage them. It's all totally in the personal engages it. Eat like a mensch, so you elevate the food. Bracha and kosher, and all the other engagements in the world. But, so it's all one-sided. The person, the yid. But it comes to engaging the medaber, a fellow human being, since he has choice, so this can't be funny. There's different ways. So there's the oifen that the human being, the non-Jew himself is a seeker. He's seeking good, and he wants to be connected to Kedusha. In the words of the Maimon, Lichona la Kedusha. He wants to be subdued He wants himself to kedusha, and he wants to be elevated. Elevate me, like it was by Shloimeh, that many nations came, or they sent messenger, they sent contingents, and then so much so that Malchus Shva, the queen of Shva, heard, and she himself came. So from their own free will, they chose to be elevated by Shloimeh. Now, when that happens, it's enough that the Yid, in his own state of Olam HaTikun, can elevate the world. So that's Avodas Tzadikim. The Maimon doesn't say this, but it comes out then that the Avodah that elevates a resistant world is Avodas HaTshuva. Avodas HaTshuva is a crazy Avodah that breaks all boundaries. It's Toyo de Kedusha. It's that Avodas HaTshuva itself is the Avodah of elevating the Tzutzik Kedusha of Olam HaToyo. Doesn't mention this here, but that's the Klal saying it, or at least connected. At any rate, so that's one kind of fellow human being. But then when there's a Medaber that chooses the opposite, and the words of the Maimon in Yiddish there by the number 18, Mekenit ein Keren mit ihm, von ihm übersparen. Ein Keren means literally, deal with him, and übersparen will become him. Olam HaTikun, Avodas Tzadikim, a nice guy, and nice in Kedusha, in the truest sense, is no match for the Gewalt and the intensity of such an opposition. And that's what what's coming now is quoted throughout the mind of the Pasuk in the conclusion of the debate between Eov and his Chaverim. So the Eibishter steps in and he says at the end, comes in a stormy wind. Look at it inside. You have to know these psukim and the ICS. By the number 19 in the text. Hashem is talking to Eov. If your arm, your strength is like God, like me, what's the test? One test. Crush the Rishoyim in their place. Tamneim be'ofar, bury them in the earth. Again, but then I'll admit to God that your power is on par with mine. Whatever the context there in the story of Eov. But we see from here that what's the simon if Eov has the keich of the Eibishter is breaking the Rishoyim when? In their breaking the Rishoyim with his opposition. And that can be done only by the Eibishter, not by Eov, who was a tzaddik. That wasn't the question of his tzidkus. It's whether he had this divine power. The tzaddik can't do it. That's Olam HaTikun. And the Rishoyim, which come from Toyo, need Hashem directly. And that's why Esav is the B'choyer. And this he concludes is that Haman argued that Mordechai should bow down. Your grandfather bowed down. Your grandfather Yaakov bowed down to my grandfather Yaakov, and so you too should as well. And he adds in at the end here, they wouldn't leave it like that. How could Yaakov bow down? Because Yaakov thought that Esav was already elevated. And therefore there's a mile in Esav. And therefore he bowed down to him. But when that was before they actually met, that's as he approaching him. And then when he meets him, he sees he's not ready yet, and there's a work to be done till Mashiach comes. Okay, Eis Dalet. Mobaprati is as follows. When can't you overcome Olam HaToyo? That's when the matter is aligned with the Oidis Takifim of Vayivez the Toyo. Then the tzaddik can't bring him down. Only the Eibishter. Whereas after the Oidis of Toyo have been extracted from the matter and elevated, then the tzaddikim can break them. So it's not understood that only the Eibishter can bring down the Rishoyim. We find many stories by tzaddikim that they defeated the Rishoyim through their tefillas, all the way down throughout the generations. But what's the chiluk? The chiluk is, and according the source is the Gemara in Berachos, whether one can antagonize a non-Jew or not, a Rosh, not a non-Jew, a Rosh or not. And the Gemara concludes, it depends. If you see a Rosh Hashoma Sachekes Lo Altes Garaboy, if you see the wicked and his hour is shining, so then don't antagonize. In such a matzav, you would not be able to. So this is reflected. The Eibush tells Avram that they revi Yeshuvena. This is not in the relationship with Yidden. Make this clear here. Because that's going to be later. That's a certain exception. Their own independent wickedness has not reached its measure, so therefore Yidden cannot come in until they deserve to be driven out. Why? Because they're still then aligned with the Eidos of Takifim, the intense Eidos of Toyo, by divine plan. And that's what Moishe Rabbeinu, as it explains, why they told him, come to Pari, rather than go to Pari. Come means come with me, because Moishe was afraid. He was afraid, as the Zohar describes Pari as the great serpent that crouches in the Hatanya Nagod Larevetz Tachasayir, that crouches at the bottom of the Nile River. And the Eibishter told him, you can do it because I'm coming with you. And he brought him Cheder Lifnim Cheder, and he elevated him. That Para is Malosh and is Perio. Is Perio called the Heide. It's brought in Zayach, so this brings it. That engaging Para was, again, this idea of accessing, peeling back the Helmavast. This is the act of Priya, Mila. We remove the concealment. It's Perio called the Heide, and it's peeling back all the lights. All the lights should be revealed. That's what Para, it's Shadish, is very high Madrege. So that's what they told Eov. Hadoich Rishoyim Tachton, crush the wicked in their place at the zenith of their height. This you cannot do. This is B'kei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And crush them. Tomlin Ba'ofar, and bury them, hide them in the dust, in the earth, as they are in their metzius, bury them. This is imzroya kakei. It's only b'keich of the Eibishter. Now the square brackets. Look at the square brackets, friends, please, friends. By the number 30, square brackets below the bottom there. That even though the shadish is very high, the shadish of Eilis the Torah is not Shema but Shem Sag. It'll be a little later, but Prati Shem Sag is Yud, except for the Vav. The Vav is Vav Aleph Vav. Otherwise, the Hey is Hey Yud, the Hey Yud. But the Gabi the Eibush, it's only a order. He's got a little later, but Prati is Shem Ab, that expresses the Atzmiyus of Elikus, the Pnimius of Elikus. From there, the Rosh is brought down. Interestingly, he doesn't invoke that here. He invokes it later only when he talks about Pnimius and Chetzonius, which is when Klippa interferes with the Jews' Avodah. That's a different, then boom, over. So Asher Alkein, Eibishter, therefore, brings higher than Shemsag, brings him down. But, concluding here, once their measure is full, or Kishain Hashom Asachekes Loi, so it's two separate inyanim. I don't know the difference. Either the measure of sin isn't full, or the hour is not smiling at him. Why would it not smile at him? Okay, it's different. They found him. He's brought down because either he has no longer justifies his existence because his measure is full of sin, or it's not because he's full of sin, but heaven's use of him is no longer. separate for a different reason. Shomas ha'chekes that they in the kavana, he's run his course, not because it's wicked, it's just no longer useful in that way with his power. He still remains tamtzis the tamtzis. Then the tzaddikim, as he says before, as he says now, that they can elevate them. An example is the aluka, the leech, that it dies once it's gorgeous and full of blood. So he teaches, what does it mean? That when the medamba, the person, the human being in this world that comes from Matoya fulfills his purpose, and all in Tutik Dusha, therefore, are being elevated, extracted, that's the blood that is drawn out, then he dies. The blood drains from him, and what's left? That's what death means. And what's left is only the tamtis, the essence of the essence. This is a Russian in the Dama Tamtis, is in the laws of Shchita. The laws of Taruvi, Chastaruvis, Bosavacholov, the Taruvis. So the tamtis, so then, now was he still alive, his mitzias, without the takeif, without the intensity, then the tzaddik from Beilam Atikun can elevate him, refine him. And what's the dogma of Bilam Barasha? He was Beilam Atoyu. So there's two things we see in the story of Bilam. Eden couldn't overpower him. And in the end, Moishe did because the Eibishter put in his mouth the words of Nevuah, and that made the great parsha. He brought in the brackets interesting Vot von Tzemach Tzedek, who said the Gewaltig and Uftush that Bilam is prophesying L'ased Lovi Mashiach. So then what happened? So once therefore the good is extracted, as we said, why Dafka him? Because that's what Mashiach is all about, is the elevation of it is the Toyo. And so therefore Dafka Bilam is the one that says it. It's a Mashiach's whole origins all come from these murky, dark, Toyodica places, because that's his whole point. Rus before that Tombar. So after Bilam says his prophecies, what does he say? Boys, it's over. Goodbye, I'm going home. Nothing more to say. I'm going home. And then there was a great battle just before the enter Yisrael. And they killed him. Moishe Rabbeinu killed him. But before that, before the measure is full, then the B'tei of Godel, then they cannot be subdued only by the Eibishter who would step in. Okay, this is Mitzat Seder Inyanim. Now, Leis starts the Iker Chiddush here. That's Mitzat Ateva Inyanim. They run their course. And then the Tzaddik, so there's two Ifanim so far. They run their course. The hour is not smiling at them. They measure sin is full, one of the two. And then the Tzaddik, Beilam Atikun, regular Avodah can subdue such clip. But at the zenith of their power, only the Eibishter can do that. And God steps in sometimes and does that. The story of Bilam and Paray. There are exceptions to the rule. But now there's a new rule. And this new rule is like an exception, but it's a rule. Why is it an exception? Because it draws on Haydn Ishtalshalus. But it's a rule. And the Rebbe is making the rule based on the Zohar. The Zohar says that even though not the normal Mitzad the Seder, they wish to wait till their measure is full, but if they cross the line and Mitzirim Meikim Yisrael, then the Eibishter will step in even if their measure is not full. And then he added, from the Tzemach Tzedek, added this Meidik thing up in Igla that the Gemara says, Yerushalmi Taisa brings the Masech to Kiddushin, with Machshava Kemaisa, so by a Yid, not by a Akum, yes. Therefore, it comes out, that's the end of the source. Applying it to our case, even if they think to a Ham Eden, so it's as if they did so already. It's as if already their good is extracted. They like the aluka that it's that.
Excuse me 1 second. By a yid, the machshove toiva HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. But a negative thought, l'chayre, is not. The chiddush l'chayre is that by a goy, by a rasha, a negative thought is maisa. Is that what he's saying?
He's saying when a guy has an evil thought, God considers it like he did it.
Correct.
Not.
Mashenki not by a yid. Is that correct?
Not by a yid, no.
Correct. Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
We're not punished for machshavas.
Okay.
In the same way as ma'isa. Not the same way. I mean, we sully ourselves, but it's not the same. The onshim in Torah don't come for machshava. But by a non-Jew, yes. So then he's like, even the machshava, it's like he's gorged himself with the blood, the leech, and he's now finished. Ois mitzias. So in machshava alone, it's already the good as being extracted for him. Like in the same way that his measure is full. And therefore, he's to be crushed. And look, the last words of this Ois Hey here, this first paragraph at least. And that's what it says in the Megillah, the Diuk. The Megillah, in the end of the Megillah, Paraktes. Yoshe machshavte aroshel hovan asher choshev atzedikim al roshei. The evil thought that he had, reverts now on his head. Remember, the diak is the machshava. First, it didn't explain later the head. The head just means the shadish is very high. Toyo, that even his evil thought is like he did it, and therefore, Haman's downfall happens. Now comes the whole beard. Why this is so? This is from the Ramez on the Zohar that said this is all based on the Zohar. That if that even if their measure is not full, then they can be overcome. Why? Because there are means from the end. That's the whole Metzias, that unconditional existence. Whereas Yidden are from Pnimius. Now, we're just saying Yidden are high. We're saying the whole time that the Shadish of the world is higher. So even though we said before the Eidus of the Toyo precede Tikkun, that's true. But the connection to Olam HaToyo itself is only in the Chitzonius Dikaway, and not from the Pnimius of Olam HaToyo. Because Pnimius is only a Yid. Pashat, the Yid is the Kavanah. Everything else is there to serve the Kavanah. The face Pnimius shines to you. And the Gemara, the beautiful Gemara in Brachas, where on the pasuk, Yis Hashem Panav Elecha, that Hashem will turn His face to you. So that's it's forbidden for a judge to show favor to one litigant over the other. So how could the Eibishter do that? So the Eibishter says, how could I not do that? I told him in Torah such and such, and they're medakta, because the context there is chalta v'savota, you only bench when you're fully satisfied, and they bench even after kazayas. So they go beyond. How can I not go beyond? And that beyond, that's the Pnimius. That's the Pnimius. Therein lies the Pnimius. And therefore, important pasuk here, by the number 42, it's addressed, quoted a few times, woven into the Maimer, that I will save you from the distance. Now, the Sibab Pshat is when you are distant. But the Zayr explains that the pasuk is describing where the Yeshua comes from, this transcendent, distant level. The level of Loma Havaya Tamid Barachak. Why do you stand at a distance? Which is when in Zman HaGolus. Zman HaGolus, that's when Klip as Yapahanda, is the Torah dominate here in Elam Hazeh. From there, Meir Rachak, where even though the Kutchibricha Solik Leila Leila, and to the dark of Kachashecha Ka'ira, where light and dark are equal, and other Rabbi Torah is even higher. We don't have an answer to that. My question yesterday, or the other day. At any rate, from there, from there comes the Yeshua. Lama Tamid Barachik is Bechitzonius. But when we draw on the Pnimius, and Adarabah, the Mirachik, from this level, this transcendent level, comes the Yeshua. And what's the Yeshua? The Shin Ayin Hey Nahir in the 375 lights. And that is the union of Aras Panim. I told you it's Shem Kael, written out fully twice, plus the number 5, Hey Eloh, Hey Tato of Shem Havaya. Kabbalah Cheshvan. Akoponim, that is to turn. The word shah means to turn. When you turn with your primis, with your face. That's what shah means. So the Shin Ein Hey Naheirin, that's Aras Panim. Maybe she turns his face to us, the primius. And that's the Merochek then, the Madrege of Chachashech HaKaida, and what completely transcendent. And the Pnimis HaKavonim. Sava Kadosh Baruch Hu is all the Yid. So when the non-Jew interrupts the Yid, and the Ikim, the Yisrael, so then there's no Metzias, and the Nebishter steps in. That's a rule, not as an exception. That's a rule, because the Pnimius is, oh no, you touch the Pnimius, it's over. So it's just like, even though this master saw some, personally he has not filled his measure of evil, hasn't done so many Vayivez. Start up by the Yid, over. Very ridiculous thing that I was saying here. And at the end of this ice, in Eises HaKabbalah, Toyo and Tikkun, respectively, Hashem Sag and Shema. Again, Shem Sag is Mili of Yud, except for the Vav, which is Aleph. But in the Shem Ab, Ayin Beis, that's a Mili of Yud, Yud, Yud. That's Bittul, Bittul, Bittul. That's pure Likus. And that's the Darg of Meshiacha Merochai. And he explains for us, he spells it out for us. He literally did Shem Sag, between Shem Sag and Shem Ab, 72 is in that middle letter Vav. In Shem Ab, it's what the Vav is Vav, Yud, Vav. In Shem Sag, it's Vav, Aleph, Vav. What's the Aleph here? Clear, there's two Aleph. There's Aleph of Klippa and Aleph of Kedusha. The Aleph of Klippa is Aluf. That's the 11 chieftains of Esav. And later he brought at the end of the Maimah the 7 kings. So that's the 7 chieftains. I mean, in Shvidas HaKelim. So it's a very high level to the Shem Sag. But because it wasn't integrated with Shvidas HaKelim, so therefore the Eidos and Kelim don't become one. There's no Achtos there in that way, not Achtos with Gvul. There's no Achtos between Bli Gvul and Gvul. In Eir and Keli, so that's the Shvira, and that causes Yeshes down here, the chieftains, Aluf. Whereas the Aleph in Torah is Adarab, it's all integrations. Aleph Chachma, Aleph Chabin, again from Sefer Iyov. That's Bittul, that's learning Chachma Bina, Chachma Bina the Kedusha. Whereas the Aluf of Shem Sag is the union of Yeshes, the opposite. Esav said, Yeshli Rav, I have lots of things, and Yaakov said, Yeshli Kerl, I have everything, it's all integrated. And so they are the chieftains of Esav, the Yeshes and Metzias. Then, so when it comes, the Gil of Shem Ayin Beis Shem Ab, Hineni Meshiacha Merochik, higher than the Aleph of Shem Sag, and higher than Shema, Tayo and Tikkun. There's also Aleph and Shema, that's Aleph of Kedusha. So then that causes in Meshiacha Merochik, and that affects the Hoduch Rishoyim, the crashing of the Rishoyim. Okay, so tomorrow, Be'ezer Hashem, we will do 2 things. We'll finish the Chazzarah outside, and then we'll learn the Sikha that the Rebbe said at the end of the Fabrengi, towards the end of the Fabrengi, Be'emshech, to the Maimer, something else, something beautiful from the Tzemach Tzedek, and Hashgacha Pratis explaining beautifully, Kapitel Kuf Chav Daled, that we praise Hashem, He didn't make us teref. Teref is fear, is prey. They should aim for their teeth. Their teeth. And if you remember, it's connected to Haki Hashinov of the Haggadah. So you'll have a vort, if you remember, also to say, what's this? We tell the Rosh, blunt his teeth of all things. What's the teeth got to do with it? So this is all in the Pasuk Kufchav, the Kapitel Kufchav Daled, which we'll learn to. It never says very big. It says Kabbalah, take a little bit, but beautiful. And we'll learn that Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. A wonderful day. Yom Sudas Tovos.